Bienenstich, also known as bee sting cake, got its name from when 15th century German bakers defended their village by throwing beehives at the enemy. Although I love that ingenuity, I think it's more likely the cake got its name from the use of honey as a sweetener. It has 2 layers of yeasted cake with a cream filling and a honey and almond topping. I'm going to make a bee sting cake in a little bit, and I have the perfect beer to pair for it. In fact, it's another German specialty brewed just for the spring, a Maibock. We'll see how these two pair together in a little bit on this episode of Baking a Brew. The pastry cream for our filling can be made ahead of time. So to make that, we'll start with 3 egg yolks and whisk with 20 grams of cornstarch until smooth. Don't worry, I'll clean that up later. I'll then begin heating up 1.5 cups of milk with 65 grams of sugar and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'll heat this over low heat, stirring frequently. Once the mixture starts to foam, I'll use a little bit to temper the eggs before adding to the full pot. I'm just going to pour it in slowly while whisking to prevent the eggs from heating up too quick and scrambling. And once it's fully integrated, I'll mix everything together and return to the heat. I'll heat this up slowly under low heat. It might take a little bit to thicken up, but once it starts, it goes quickly. So you're going to want to whisk constantly to prevent it from scorching on the bottom of the pot. Then once it thickens up, I'll turn off the heat and add about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'll give that a quick mix and then move it into a bowl to chill until I'm ready for it. As the pastry cream comes in contact with the air, it'll create a skin on top. So I want to cover it with plastic wrap, not just over the bowl, but directly on top of the pastry cream. And I'll move this into the refrigerator until I'm ready for it. And now we'll move on to our dough. And that's right, I said dough, not batter, which is usually the terminology we would use when talking about cake. This is actually a yeasted cake, so it's sort of a cross in between bread and modern day cake. We'll start with 280 grams of bread flour, and we'll add a 1/4 cup of milk, 2 large eggs, 60 grams of butter, and 50 grams of honey, a variety of your choice. I'll also add 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1.5 teaspoons of instant yeast. I'll move that to the mixer while I mix for about 10 minutes using the dough attachment. The dough may look wet initially, but as it mixes and the gluten strengthens, it should start to form a cohesive ball and start to pull everything away from the sides of the mixing bowl. And eventually the dough will start to look nice and smooth and would feel very elastic. And we'll see how this feels. It feels very stretchy and it's really soft, but not sticky at all. I'll just form this into a tight ball and move it into a greased bowl where I can let it rise. I'll cover this with plastic wrap and leave it in a warm place until it doubles in size. About 2 hours. Once the dough is risen, I'll punch it down to redistribute all the gas produced by the yeast. I'll then remove the dough from the bowl and place it into a greased 9-inch springform pan. The good thing about this particular dough is that you don't have to worry too much about shaping it. You just press it into the pan. A lot of the skill involved in bread baking is shaping dough, so this is actually a good starter for people who are just looking to get into yeasted breads. And I'll cover this with plastic wrap and let it rise another 30 to 60 minutes. Meanwhile, I'll start making my topping. I'll slowly heat up 85 grams of butter, and I'll add 65 grams of sugar. Spilling a little bit because I'm watching the camera and not what I'm doing. And then I'll add 3 tablespoons of honey, blocking the shot with my hand because I'm watching what I'm doing and not the camera. Multitasking is difficult. There's a better shot of the honey. I'll heat this up until it just starts to simmer, and then I'll add 2 tablespoons of heavy cream. I'll mix that up and then add 128 grams of sliced almonds. I'll turn off the heat and mix that up and allow it to cool before adding it to the dough. Now let's check back on our dough. After it's fully proofed, I'll dock it with a fork to give the syrup a place to penetrate and to break up any large air bubbles that may have accumulated. And I'll gently spread my honey and almond topping on top. Trying to be careful not to deflate the dough, but want to make sure to spread everything evenly. And I'll gently try to fill in any spots I may have missed. I'll cover this up and allow it to sit as I preheat my oven to 350 degrees. And once my oven is preheated, I'll place it on the middle rack for 25 to 28 minutes. Did I mention that springform pans have a tendency to leak and you should probably place a baking tray underneath to catch anything that drips? I probably should have mentioned that. After allowing the cake to cool and the kitchen to desmokify, we'll prepare our cream filling. I'm going to whisk half a cup of heavy cream until it becomes thick. And then mix up that pastry cream until it gets smooth again. It tends to get lumpy as it cools. I'll fold in about half the whipped cream. And once that's fully integrated, I'll add the other half. Mixing a pastry cream with whipped cream essentially makes it into what's called a cream diplomat. I'll continue folding until it becomes smooth and homogeneous, and then I'll move everything into a piping bag. You don't have to pipe this mixture, you could just spoon it on a cake, but I find the piping easier to get everything in a nice even layer. Now that our cake is cool, let's take the springform pan apart. And we'll slice this into 2 halves. I don't have any fancy equipment to do this, so I'm just using a long serrated knife and trying to keep everything level. I'll take the bottom half, cut the tip off my pastry bag, and try to pipe the cream diplomat in an even layer on top. I'll try to spread this out evenly with a spatula. And then place the top layer directly on top. And there it is, the German Bienenstich cake. Yeasted cake with a cream diplomat filling and a honey almond topping. And now I'll cut myself a slice. The only problem I had, as you can see, is that little spot on top where it sunk. But honestly, this tastes so good, I decided it didn't necessitate baking it again. But I'll definitely see if I could identify the cause of that next time. Let's try it with one of my favorite beers for the spring, Ayinger Maibock. I think Maibock and honey pair really well together because the Maibock has that malty sweetness to it that's not overpowering. In previous videos, whenever I talk about malt, it's usually in the context of caramelization and roast. Well, Maibock's proof that you can get a lot of flavor out of paler malts, like that biscuity or bready character. Now, at 7% alcohol, there is plenty of malt in this beer, but you still get that really clean flavor. I mean, look how crystal clear that golden color it has. The Maibock differentiates itself from other Bock style beers because it has a little more hop flavor to it as well. It uses noble hop varieties that have that subtle floral and herbal quality. Another reason why I think it pairs so well with honey. I think Maibock is a great example of German brewing practices. It shows that you don't need a really complicated recipe to create a delicious beer. It's base malt, noble hop varieties, and a very clean German lager yeast. But it's the meticulous brewing practices that really give this beer its character. Ayinger makes a fantastic one, and it pairs perfectly with this Bienenstich. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and join me next time when I take another classic beer and try to find a perfect bit to pair with it.